Rajni, what's wrong?
Tom, I have a script and I don't know what to do with it. Should I burn it? Feed it to my cat?
You need some writers group therapy.
Hello and welcome to Writers Group Therapy.
I'm Tom.
And I'm Roshni. We're writers helping writers. Are you ready for your session? The doctors are in. So as you guys know, we have a writers group here in Los Angeles, and we're so excited because we're also now going to start featuring some of the people in our awesome group who are here to talk about their projects. So our first person today on the podcast is Adam Pineless. Hi, Adam.
Hey, how's it going?
Welcome, Adam.
Good. We're so glad you're joining us. So, Adam, tell us what you're working on right now.
Well, I just recently wrote a punk rock musical pilot, so that's my most recent script.
Ooh, what's it called?
It's called Rock Show. I am open to better names if someone has one, but I do think that it encompasses essentially what it does, in terms of the story and where the characters are and sort of just the world that they're in.
Mm-hmm. So what's it about?
Well, basically, Joan, she's a bassist and she has rainbow colored hair, which is kind of fun. But she basically, they're in a band, and the show follows the progress of the band from the time they get picked up onto their first record label to when they start touring and kind of going through the different trials and tribulations that bands go through. And it has to deal a lot with, how the band connects as a group. It has to do with how the experiences that they have when they either are, starting out in their hometown, but then they're starting to do shows that are further away and more, on the road.
So, Adam, does it take place in a certain musical era?
It actually takes place sort of in present day, but it does have some they're referencing a lot of things that were, as they were sort of growing up, fueling their music.
Oh, cool. So how did you come up with this idea?
Well, I used to be sort of in a band a while ago. We were not very big and we didn't tour or play, many shows or anything, but playing there kind of taught me that, I can write music, and I've written pilots before. This one in particular, I kind of thought, what? I wonder if I could write a song for a pilot. And from a writing standpoint, it was a very different sort of thing because, what I found is that you really need to go with the tone before. The content obviously needs to fit with what the lyrics are and what the characters are saying. But from a writing standpoint, the tone, if it doesn't fit the scene, it's not going to work, and I really learned that because like the opening number to the song, which you guys will be playing later as a clip, that song, I had rewritten it like probably 6 different ways, and, all the other ways were great, but there was something wrong. And in the end, that was what it was that, you do need to have the tone match the scene, or you've got like nothing pretty much. I mean, the words you can kind of, make up to fit the song and the scene and so on, but you also want it to be something that introduces the characters. Like this takes place in a very heightened punk rock world. So the characters themselves are, kind of slight exaggerations of the different characters in that world. And, you have the cocky Reverend Stitch, which is the guy who's the lead singer of the band. Ajax is the drummer, kind of a Travis Barker from Blink-182 kind of guy. He's got a shaved head and tattoos. And Harley's sort of like the stoner bassist who's kind of chill. And, you get into what these different characters are and how they kind of all work together as a band, and everyone brings their A game to the table. They're all great musicians, but seeing how they kind of have to work together, against different odds and, trying to grow their careers and deal with their own personal things as well.
Well, in fact, I think this would be a great time to play that clip. I'm dying to play at the Hard Rock.
Just the thought gives me a heart. Don't want to scream, just gotta play. It's a tune that's in my brain, and it drives me insane. No matter
awesome. So talk about the inspiration behind that. How'd you come up with all that? You said you rewrote it several times.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing was is as an opening number, you really want to introduce people to the world. And the song Headbanger, which you just heard, it sort of starts off, it's sort of structured in a way where you're addressing sex, drugs, and rock and roll. So, there are sexual elements to the whole song, just the word headbanger, and the way that it's sung, but also the way that, the story, they're singing about, the smoking and, just kind of like that world that they're living in. And from the get-go, you kind of want everyone to know that so that you don't have to spend time revealing these things later on when you can focus on the characters.
So is this all going to be original music, or are you going to be doing covers and, homages to famous punk bands and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's actually all original music. When I first started writing it, which was actually the first draft I did, I didn't even look at. I just started a whole new one again, going off of what I remembered when I rewrote it. Because originally it was written to have other people's songs, and I've seen how that's been done in the past in some movies, like what was that Beatles one, Across the Universe, or things like that. You see sort of the ways that people do that, but I always feel like there's something inorganic about it. And I feel like, when I was sort of, at first I thought, I couldn't write a musical, like how do you do that? But what I kind of realized was I've written lots of songs, I've written scripts. This is just the combination of the two. And seeing a lot of the more recent TV shows that are musicals, sort of like one that I liked a lot was Gallivant. I'm a massive fan of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, which is still on. Those shows have managed to show people like, look, you can write great music on a weekly basis. It's just a lot of really hard work. And, that's sort of how I felt about it was, I really believe that, the harder you work, the more it'll pay off. But, it's going to be that journey to get there, and when I started to sort of redo the script, I didn't look at the older version. I think I kept all the character names, but even now I haven't looked at it since, and it's kind of irrelevant because in the end, what it gave me was the structure and the framework to kind of put in the story. And what's fun is you get to go episode from episode through season and season to see this band as they grow themselves. And what happens when what happens when one of them they start getting more fans at shows? What are some of the problems with that? What happens when one of them gets their first stalker? What happens when they it's just kind of there's 1,000 different ways here. They deal with 360-degree contracts, which a lot of bands don't like, which basically is a contract where you are losing your money from, like, they take money, not the record label takes money not just from the sale of the music, but other things too, a lot of other things. And it's tough for bands to make it nowadays because of that. Although then there's also the fact that nowadays a lot of people choose not to go on bands, so you have a lot of conversation about the sort of politics of the music industry, the way that technology has changed the industry.
I love how you say when they get their first stalker, like when they get their first kiss, when they get their first
Well,
stalker.
yeah. I mean, I think that kind of stuff happens to,
No,
these people.
that's good.
A friend of mine is an actress, and, as people have started to recognize her more and more, they think they know her. And, it's a really bizarre and creepy thing, for someone to have to deal with. And how does that affect Joan, the main character? How does it affect the other people in the band? Do they feel safe? Because, what was something that was once just rock music and is, relatively harmless and maybe not in spirit, but, in terms of safety, it's a safe thing in general to enjoy. But, then it gets too far.
How old is Joan and the rest of the band members? What's the target audience too?
Yeah, well, I mean, Joan and the rest of the band members, they're kind of all in their sort of like early to mid 20s. So they're at that age where they're old enough to be adults, but they are also sort of just still figuring out what adulthood means. And what was the other question? I'm sorry.
Oh, what was the target audience? So
Oh yeah, and I mean the target audience. This is definitely adult in content. A lot of the things I've written before were definitely more family friendly. This one, one of the first lines in one of the songs is "My body's lined with spermicide," which is not really like it's definitely a terrible like image, but it's something that kind of kicks off the thing, saying this isn't just for children. It's not for children at all, actually. But the thing is the world that they are in, it needs to feel natural that they would be in it. And that, I like the idea of it being sort of an alternate world where it's sort of just more heightened to punk rock. You've got some of the grittiness, sort of like when you see like some of the animated cartoons, like I always liked Ariel Monsters on Nickelodeon a long time ago. And I know it's sort of random reference, but I love like the grittiness of the look. And even an episode that might be very upbeat has this sort of like, this is the atmosphere. And I love the idea of this having sort of this atmosphere where you don't necessarily know what's around every corner, but you're excited to see it.
That's cool. I was gonna ask you, I mean, you're dealing with a lot of gritty, hard themes here, and yet it's a musical. And usually musicals are light and fun. I mean, even Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, even though she's dealing with some weird, wacky stuff, it's fun. So how are you reconciling the two? Is it a very heightened universe, or are the songs very, is it animated? Is it, you know what I mean? It seems weird to have this dark musical.
Well, yeah. Well, the music's kind of used in three ways, but one, and I'll tell you that in a second. But I think the thing about the music is that you know, luckily for punk rock, which is primarily the music it will be in, although I do see it going a little cross genre here and there depending on the needs of the episode. I do think that there is that sort of energy and passion behind it. And if, as long as that's infused in the characters, you're going to have that in the script and in the performance and, all of that. It kind of brings it all together. And, like, for instance, there's a song where Joan sings called Revenge on You. And she has just learned that, someone has, that her boyfriend has betrayed her. And it's right before she goes and plays a set on stage. And she closes her eyes and she has this moment where she sort of pictures herself, jumping off the stage and just wailing on him, like brandishing her bass guitar above her head and smashing down. And she's singing at him this song called Revenge on You. And it's about the things she wants to do to him. And she ends up ripping out his heart and, chewing it and spitting it out in his face. And it's really like violent, but it's a musical. And the whole thing, yeah. And when the whole thing is, sort of semi fantasy, and then she blinks out of it a second later and realizes, I got to play a set now, like this isn't what I can be thinking about right before I play, but I got to, and I'm going to be professional. And, she kind of makes that decision. And, that's just one of the parts of the episode. But, I think that it really encapsulates, to me, the music's used in three different ways. The first song is sort of the introductory song, at least in the pilot, I'm talking about only the pilot, but the introductory song is sort of like, welcome to the world. This is where we are. This is what's going on. The second song, Revenge on You, I just sort of described. And that's more personal, but it also is like where music allows you to sort of show the fantasy. Like, one thing musicals do really well is they allow you to have these sort of fantastical elements to your to a scene that, normally you'd have to tell a lot of this info through subtleties or through other characters, but they can actually say it directly this way, which is a little bit different, I think, in the genre. And then, or the medium or whatever. And then the third way that, the songs are used is, the third song for me is, it's called Cashews. And it's one I actually wrote a long time ago, but it's a song about, the song itself is about losers, and it's kind of your normal like punk rock vibe, definitely Green Day influenced. But, the thing about it is that it's about the performance. Like, you get to see in that scene how the audience reacts and, is working off of the players in the band, and how both of them together have a relationship, and it gets crazier, and there's fans running on stage, and, the band who's playing, Joan and them, they're looking at each other like, gosh, this is really getting to be bigger than we expected. This is pretty crazy. So, they're right at the cusp of the starting of their, trajectory, kind of.
Very cool. That'll be really cool to check out once it's done. So, Adam, if people want to check out this pilot or to just find you online, how can they find you?
Well, the pilot isn't anywhere online yet, but I do have actually, I recently released a single that's unrelated to this. It's at adamversus.com. That's VERSUS. You can go there. It's also on Bandcamp under Adam Versus. Instagram, I'm Adam Pineless. Twitter, I'm at Adam Pineless. But to be honest, I don't really go on Twitter almost ever. Instagram is more where you'll find activity from mine.
We'll put those links in the show notes for everybody.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. And for all of you out there, make sure you check out Adam's work. And if you like what you hear, subscribe and share Writers Group Therapy with your friends. You can find us online on Twitter at WG Therapy, also at writersgrouptherapy.com. Share it with your friends, and we'll see you next week.